All right, 7 o'clock. We'll get
So
started.
Laura, you know how to unmute? Like, hold on a second.
I figured it out, yes. The technologically challenged. I'm unmuted now. Watch out.
All right.
Okay, let's test Debbie's sound too, please. Okay, Debbie, try again, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I can
Okay.
hear you.
Okay, so just Nick. But we'll, oh, Nick, there's Nick, okay. Okay.
Nick's connecting.
Where's Hillary?
She's on.
She's on audio only. She doesn't have her video on.
Okay.
Are we ready?
Yep.
All right. It's 7 o'clock and I'd like to call this meeting to order. Because of COVID-19 social distancing recommendations, our meeting tonight is being held virtually via the software called Zoom. We have our city council participating this evening and have made the Zoom login available on our website to any member of the public who would like to participate. Things you might want to, I need to mention is I am at City Hall and Martha Summerall, the city clerk, is with me here in council chambers. Our city administrator is in her work area, as is our assistant to the city administrator. The rest of the council and staff are joining remotely. The public is invited to participate by using the instructions included in the city council calendar item listed under the front page of missionkansas.org. You may join and just listen, or you can join with audio or video using a webcam or your smartphone. Public participants may be allowed to make public comments through the comment feature. Please note that comments are visible by all participants. If you are a member of the public and make a comment during the public comment period, please state your name and your city of residence for the record. Please be conscientious of trying to speak while others are speaking and speak slowly and distinctly. If I need to confirm something that I've heard, I will ask so that Martha can make sure that we have all the minutes correctly. There will be various times during our meeting where the public can participate. If you are here under an agenda item, when that agenda item comes up, please, I guess, use the chat function to ask your question. If your item is not under an agenda item, there is an item number 5 on our agenda where we will take comments from the public that are for items that are not on the agenda. All right, can you please join me and start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the
United States of America, to the republic
Stands
one
one
nation,
nation under God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
liberty,
and justice for all.
justice for all.
Righty, that didn't work. So item number 1, public hearings. I'm sorry, first we have to have roll call. So Martha, please call roll.
Boltinghouse,
Here.
Davis,
Here,
Laura,
here,
Newman,
Here.
Crane,
Here.
Lothrop,
here,
Schlossmacher,
Here.
Thomas,
here.
Theo.
Nick has the background of the dais. It's pretty creative. All right. Item number 2 is special presentations. We do not have any special presentations this evening. So number 3 is issuance of notes and bonds, and we do not have any issuance of notes and bonds. So we'll move on to our consent agenda, and that has 5 items tonight. Our council committees met on March 4th and fully discussed each of these items. The committees agreed that the items listed on our consent agenda are routine enough to be considered under a single motion. Several other items considered by the committees will be presented under committee reports later on tonight's agenda. If a council member or a member of the public would like an item removed from the consent agenda, they may request that at this time. Hearing none, then I would entertain a motion to approve.
Mayor, I move the city council adopt the consent agenda as printed, items 4A through 4E.
Second.
Second.
RC seconded. All right, we have a motion and a second. Please call roll.
Schlesmacher,
Aye.
Thomas,
Aye.
Boltinghouse,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Rothrock,
Aye.
Inman,
Aye.
Crane,
Aye.
Flora.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
All right, moving on to, we are at item 5, public comments. Is there any member of the public participating via Zoom that would like to make a public comment on items not included on our agenda this evening? If you do, please submit your comments or questions using the chat feature. I'll give that a second to cycle. Okay, seeing none. If I do, something does pop up, we can come back. Going to item 6, action items, Planning Commission. We do not have any items from our Planning Commission this evening, so we're moving to item 7, committee reports. Councilmember Flora, will you provide a report on our Finance and Administration Committee, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The Finance and Administration Committee met on March 4th and considered a total of 5 items, including acceptance of the meeting minutes. 2 of the action items from the meeting were approved on tonight's consent agenda. There is 1 additional item for consideration tonight. That is the second amendment to third amended and restated redevelopment agreement for the Mission Gateway project. In October of 2017, the city approved the third amended and restated redevelopment agreement for the Mission Gateway project. In October 2019, as a result of project evolution, the City Council approved a First Amendment to the 2017 agreement. The First Amendment reconciled the current project to the 2017 agreement and was required before the city could consider proceeding with any other actions concerning the issuance of special obligation bonds for the project. It was originally anticipated that the SO bonds could be marketed prior to the end of 2019, but this was delayed until this year. The city has taken all necessary steps to be positioned to issue and take the bonds to market once the developer's team is able to put the final loan document into escrow. The First Amendment specifically named 2 lenders for the project's financing, but one has since been replaced with a different lender. The Second Amendment will name Cottonwood Capital as the lender, replacing Carlyle. This amendment does not impact any of the project components or timelines, and once the loans are finalized and the bonds issued, the developer will have all the funds necessary to complete the entire project. Mayor, I move the City Council adopt the resolution approving the Second Amendment to Third Amended and Restated Redevelopment Agreement for the Mission Gateway project.
Second.
Nick seconded. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call for the roll.
Davis,
Aye.
Schlesmacher,
Aye.
Flora,
Aye.
Thomas,
Aye.
Inman,
Aye.
Crane,
Aye.
Rothrock,
Aye.
Boltinghouse.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
All right. Anything else, Solly?
No, that is it for Finance Administration Committee.
All right, then we move on to Councilmember Thomas, report on the Community Development Committee.
The Community Development Committee also met on March 4th and discussed 4 items. These included acceptance of the committee minutes and an update on the policy for shoveling sidewalks. The committee considered 2 action items, both of which were approved on tonight's consent agenda. There are no additional items for consideration.
All right, thank you. That concludes item 7. Let's move on to agenda item 8, unfinished business. We don't have any unfinished business tonight, so we'll move on to item 9, new business. We have 2 new business items tonight. Our first is a state of emergency disaster proclamation. Ms. Smith, would you please provide us with information?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. think as everyone is aware, last Friday, March 13th, in accordance with section 250.030 of the Mission Municipal Code, Mayor issued a state of emergency disaster proclamation related to the COVID-19 outbreak. This declaration, which is only valid for 7 days, allowed us to relax some of our regular policies and procedures in order to allow us to be more flexible and responsive in dealing with this complicated and constantly evolving situation. Most notably, last Friday's proclamation closed all general city facilities to the general public. Along with Johnson County, we were one of the first cities in the area to declare this state of emergency. And I think it was a prudent move that has allowed us to be ahead of many others in our conversations and decision making. Tonight, we're here to discuss the potential revisions and/or extension of the declaration. Since last Friday, the county has amended their initial declaration to revise the number of individuals prohibited in public and private gatherings from 250 to 10. The Johnson County Health Officer also issued 2 important orders related to the closure of schools within the county and closure for restaurants, bars, taverns, clubs, and movie theaters until 2:01 a.m. on April 1st. In addition, Governor Kelly issued an executive order prohibiting gatherings as well. The number prohibited in the state or the governor's executive order was 50. The county has clarified that the county declaration can be more restrictive. And so we are operating under the county's restriction of 10 or fewer. Based on conversations that occurred late this afternoon, we do expect that the county's declaration will again be revised at the Board of County Commissioners meeting tomorrow morning. I have not yet seen a revised draft of the proclamation, but I believe it will extend the declaration for 30 days from tomorrow and will remove several of the exemptions that were previously included in their declaration. One of the things that we have learned over the last 10 days or so is that as soon as you think you have landed on a plan that makes sense, something changes, and everyone is moving quickly to revise and rework to align with the recommendations coming from our various public health authorities. I don't foresee that changing in the near future. We are all learning, reacting, and responding as we move forward. Yesterday, the County Department of Health and Environment's ongoing investigation confirmed that 6 out of the 11 COVID-19 cases in the county were acquired locally and not through travel. This means that the coronavirus is circulating in our community and not only coming in from other regions, or in some of the common language, we are experiencing community spread. As a result of this identified community spread, public health resources are now being shifted away from containment efforts to mitigation efforts. For the last period of time, our county health officials have been sort of tracing back contacts and identifying people who have come in contact with those who are presumptive positive cases, recommending quarantine or requiring quarantine or isolation. Going forward, that practice is generally going to stop as we just don't have the resources to be able to keep up with that. So the recommendations coming out of the health department yesterday are that anyone exhibiting mild symptoms can expect not to be tested at this time, and that testing is going to be prioritized to the sickest patients who are seriously ill and may require admission to the hospital. They feel that excessive testing of individuals with minor or mild symptoms may put too much strain on laboratories and hospital resources. It has not changed their recommendations in terms of when individuals should self-quarantine or isolate, but I did want to just, again, advise of those latest sort of changes, and again, this is a dramatically shifting landscape. So at this point, what I'd like to do is review in your packet revisions that we are requesting through to the emergency declaration. We are not requesting to rescind and reissue that because we would like to preserve the date of last Friday, March 13th, as the date of our initial declaration. So we are recommending that you amend and consider extending that initial declaration. So as you can see in the information that was provided yesterday, we would recommend adding a couple of whereas clauses. So part of our goal with this emergency declaration is to help communicate more clearly, both today and for those who might be looking back at these documents in future years, to understand all of the factors that went into our decision making. So Friday, we were somewhat limited in our whereas clauses. We would recommend adding a couple of whereas clauses that would just help frame the situation and the environment that these decisions are made in. So we would recommend the addition of the 2 whereas clauses and then a proclamation that would just reiterate the closure of the City of Mission facilities, including the community center, the public works facility, city hall, municipal court, and the police department through Sunday, April 5th of 2020. Closures, we did not put a specific date in the March 13th declaration. We did say that closures would be continually evaluated. And I think we would like to leave that language here and then be more clear that those may be rescinded or amended based on recommendations coming from the public health agencies. We've had some conversation about, recommended closures or time periods coming from some of those public health agencies, specifically the CDC with an 8-week recommendation. I will tell you in the emergency declarations that we have seen, there's a wide variety of dates that are being used. There's not a lot of consistency in matching up with that. And from what we understand, the county's revised declaration will just extend basically through April 19th and not for that entire 8-week period. I think we would feel comfortable. We had a long discussion with the leadership team, and we've established an incident command structure and system as we deal with this issue. I think we would feel comfortable as a staff leaving this April 5th recommendation because, again, I think that we're going to continue to see over the next couple of weeks dramatic changes and shifts. I think what we've shown is that we can certainly be responsive in a very timely fashion to adjusting as necessary. And so we would recommend that we set that date specifically and then be poised to react and respond appropriately and consider any extensions based on the information available at the time. From what I understand, the county's health officer's order related to the restaurants is not going to be extended to match that same 30-day period. It will remain they're set to expire on the April 1st, 2020 date. In addition to being date specific with closure of the city facilities, we would be specific that all governmental functions within our control, which would include city council meetings, board and commission meetings, which would constitute large public gatherings as defined as 10 or more people, would be suspended or conducted remotely through that same date, at which time they would be reevaluated and either rescinded or amended. And the same thing with all judicial functions within the control of the city, but we have recommended a Tuesday, May 12th date. And I've had some questions about why the difference between April 5th and May 12th. And that is a normal scheduling of our court dates. So court dates are set that far in advance. So we have effectively already used up all of our April court dates and are already pushing those into May. So we would not even be looking at kind of May 12th would be our first opportunity at this point to be looking at even assigning any notice to appears. In addition, although not necessary because we are bound by the orders of the Johnson County Health Officer, we felt, again, primarily just for communication and historical purposes, that we wanted to capture really the language from the orders that were issued on March 16th and reiterate our support to and willingness to abide by those orders of the Johnson County Health Officer. And that included the prohibition of large public gatherings with more than 10 people in attendance, the closures of the restaurants, dining facilities, bars, taverns, clubs, and movie theaters, and the closure of all public and private schools. As we know, Governor Kelly did issue a separate executive order, which does supersede the county health officer's order as it relates to schools, and all of the schools within the state have been closed effectively through the end of the school year. So with that, I would stop and take any questions, comments, concerns, feedback on the proposed revisions.
Laura, I had one question as we're talking about dates. Could you speak to the ability or process for reconvening this body if we did want to extend anything before our next regularly scheduled council meeting, with the understanding that the first expiration dates in this are April 5th?
Yeah, so you would have the ability to call a special meeting under the same requirements that you have now. So with the signatures of 3 council members, you would have the ability to call that special meeting and take action on, I mean, you would have to be specific in consideration of your disaster or emergency proclamation. But those requirements and provisions would not change.
Okay, but it's staff's recommendation that these dates and that process are better than just extending these dates to our next council meeting.
I think that is our position. I think there are a lot of things, again, a lot of things that we may see change dramatically. And, you know, I think that we will have a clearer picture if within these next 2 weeks, and that we can probably have one more meeting to address this, hopefully, than having a meeting and having another meeting and then having another meeting. So I think that's kind of our thought process there.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Laura, Hillary here. I have a quick question.
Yes.
In there's a piece where you talk about the judicial functions and pushing those back until May, and I understand the timeline of that. Are we at all considering pushing back any court fines or fees that may be due prior to that date to give folks reassurance that they're not needing to, you know, mail things in prior to that? And maybe there's some pieces of that I don't fully understand, but just curious.
Yes, and Martha may chime in because she'll have a better way to articulate this, but it's my understanding that our court staff since last Friday has been reaching out to people who would have court dates and providing continuances. We have talked about relaxing warrants during this time period, so are certainly looking at really all of the avenues to relax that and provide some flexibility for those people whose court dates have been impacted by this. I don't know, Martha, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's good. They have been reaching out both by phone and sending letters to everyone, and we'll be putting all those updated dockets on the website so people can see them there also.
Okay, thanks. And so those documents will say that there is an extension until that date in May?
Yes.
Correct. They will be continued, so that any fines associated are continued until those future dates.
Right.
Thank you.
Anybody else have comment or question?
I did have a couple other questions about the intersection with the county and state orders. So this declaration says we'll support the county order and its efforts. And so I was wondering, would that include we would be enforcing provisions of the county order as it relates to the partial closure of businesses, et cetera? Or how does that work?
Yes, in fact, we've been working with the police department to understand which statutes extend the ability for enforcement of those, a variety of cases. I believe as we were looking at it even this morning that our police department, building official, and code enforcement all have some authority to do that. So we are positioned, I think the county has reiterated on calls yesterday our public safety personnel were on a call specifically with the sheriff's department talking about enforcement issues and expectations. So I think everybody is well positioned, and I understand there may have been some issues in other places throughout the county, but I think from what we have seen and understand, our businesses are certainly, doing a good job of complying with those orders. But yes, we would have some of that responsibility. Charges then would come through the district attorney.
Okay.
If anything were necessary.
And on the state order side, are we doing anything? There's some relief in Governor Kelly's executive orders that I think will help our community during this hard time, related to utility shutoffs and foreclosures and evictions. Do we have any plans to publicize those or get that out to our larger landlords?
Yes, I think absolutely we can. The information that has come there, I think there is information coming down from the federal government with respect to some small business administration loans, some other relief. So we can certainly, as we've created sort of the repository on our website and through social media to access to those other resources, we will work to compile all of those things as well.
Great.
And get that word out. I mean, it's just, as you see and as you know, it's something gets added to the list almost every single hour, it feels like.
Right, and very, very much appreciate staff's efforts so far. Thank you.
I have
So
one question. Is
yes.
Is Crux doing anything to help us out with any of the communications during this time, or have they been involved with anything helping to craft a unified message? Or
We haven't involved them yet. We were working on some other sort of background pieces, and I think if it continues much longer, we would certainly involve them. I think at this point, we're really just mimicking and echoing messages from public health agencies and others. So there's not anything, again, our goal is to really try to be as consistent across all of the cities and governmental agencies. So we have not involved them yet at this point.
okay.
One thing that before you potentially look at any changes to this, these things are not included in the resolution, but I would like to just kind of give you an update and seek some council guidance and or acknowledgement of support for some more personnel related actions. Although our city facilities have been closed, the majority of our staff has been reporting this week on their regular schedules. We've modified schedules for part-time staff at the community center, working with appropriate social distancing. We've moved employees if that is necessary. There are some who are working from home. We've looked at enhanced cleaning and disinfectant procedures and other modifications to kind of our traditional workplace behaviors, no internal or external meetings. We've established a system since our lobby is closed of sort of mailboxes, so we're not delivering papers and envelopes and other things to other people's desks. Those go to a central location and can be picked up, and doing as much business as we can over the phone and via email. The part-time staff at the community center have been deep cleaning the facility, but essentially as of today, that work is effectively done. And so starting tomorrow through our April 5th date, I would propose that we consider the following: that we ask that part-time employees not be allowed to report to work, but would be paid for their regularly scheduled hours over this period of time, which is approximately 2 weeks. We believe that is an estimated about $20,000 to cover that expense. That full-time employees who are off work for COVID-19 related reasons, whether that's self-quarantine and isolation, no childcare as a result of the school closures, that through that April 5th date, they would be paid normally with no requirement to draw down their own accrued leave time. Full-time employees off work for other illnesses or injuries that were non-COVID related would be required to use their accrued leave in accordance with our existing policies. That we would then come back and revisit this policy prior to that April 5th date to determine the feasibility of either continuing this or discussing other accommodations for COVID-19 related absences. And the leadership team has been and will continue to be sort of tasked with continuing to evaluate the use and assignment of both essential and non-essential personnel and making adjustments as required. So if there's council support for those decisions, I'd like to know that and then have the ability to announce that to our staff as early as tomorrow with some of the revised recommendations coming out of the public health agencies.
I support that.
Yes, support.
I support it.
I support it.
I support it as well. I'd like to just see it on paper if possible.
I will turn that into an update. Actually, I have it drafted as an update, and so we'll hit send first thing in the morning, and we'll forward that to you as well, the communication that will go out to the employees.
Hey, Laura, I just wanted to clarify. I'm sorry, this is RC. I just wanted to clarify, you said that they wouldn't, employees would not have to tap into their leave time. I mean, that includes like sickness, like their sick time, anything like that. Is that correct?
Yeah, so if they're off for COVID related issue, they're not going to have to dip into any of their own accrued leave time. The initial communication that we provided to the employees and to you indicated that they would first use their own sick leave, and then any time beyond that would be covered by the city. That was very consistent with what we were seeing the other cities and entities in the county doing. That, I will tell you, is one of the things that has changed pretty dramatically over the last several days, and particularly with many of our partners in the northeast part of the county, Roland Park, Prairie Village, Merriam, and Fairway. And so we have been kind of evaluating and reevaluating that as a leadership team, and feel like that is an important thing to offer to our employees, at least in this next 2-week period.
Okay, I agree.
And that's really all I have with an update to that.
Laura, I apologize. Could you give a couple of examples of your essential and non-essential employees in the various departments, or does it only apply to the community center employees?
Well, right now we're working through, right now we've sort of only identified that with part-time staff at the community center. Today we've been working on some definitions of that in all of the other departments. And part of that, I will tell you, is driven very much by our desire and the commitment that we've made so far to try to keep our services available to the public, even without their ability to physically access our facilities. So whether that is building permitting, some of those other kinds of things, that's what's sort of been driving. And so we're going back and really evaluating, and I think that's why this April 5th date makes sense as well. You know, if we're going to continue to be closed, we may need to make some other adjustments. We've also revised some of those things that we're doing. So for example, in building permitting, if there's something that needs to be inspected from a life health safety perspective, we will go out and perform the inspection. If it is you're framing your basement and it can wait for a while, we're going to postpone that inspection. So we're providing flexibility for those folks who are still trying to deliver those services in the field. Obviously, all of our sworn police personnel would be essential employees. We are looking at, again, in the police department and in court, we're looking at court clerks and police clerks and evaluating essential versus non-essential. And so I expect we'll have more definition. In fact, we're meeting again in the morning to try to clarify some of those roles and what we might want to do going forward.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Laura?
Yes.
What is the interaction with the Chamber of Commerce? Has there been any discussion about businesses?
Just really, they're receiving many of the same updates that we're getting from the county, and I have been in contact with Deb Settle, particularly to make sure that as the declaration with the restaurant closure was coming out, because it came out pretty quickly on Monday, late Monday evening, that they were positioned and poised and ready to distribute information. I will say they have done a really good job in some correspondence that they have provided to their members with some of these other state and federal resources that are becoming available. And so Deb and I are just committed to trying to, obviously that information we need to recompile, as we discussed earlier, because many of our mission businesses are not also members of the Northeast Johnson County Chamber. We want to make sure that we're sharing that information, but I think they're doing a great job of trying to stay on top of that communication with their membership. And if you didn't see their email, I'm happy to forward that as well.
Thank you.
Laura,
Yes.
it's Debbie. I would presume that your policy, the current policy that you've established relative to the virus, would be modified based on someone at City Hall or in the peripheral being tested positive, right? I mean, you may decide that you need to quarantine a majority of people if someone in City Hall becomes testing positive. Is that correct?
Correct. But again, I think the waters are going to get a little trickier because if you have people who are exhibiting mild symptoms, they are not likely to be able to have access to the testing. So getting that confirmation, I think, as we move forward is going to be more difficult. So we are certainly requiring that anyone who is exhibiting symptoms of COVID-19 practice self-isolation and that they follow the CDC guidelines. And so they either have to be symptom-free for 72 hours or they have to isolate for 7 days, whichever one of those is the longer period of time. We are also still restricting, so if employees have traveled or intend to travel, we can't restrict people's personal travel. We've restricted business travel. We can't restrict personal travel, but we have at this point required that if an employee has traveled to a level 3 threat area or has been on a cruise, there's some discrepancy right now between CDC language around cruises and KDHE language around cruises. We're going to probably say cruises just to cover that more broadly, or have traveled to or changed planes, been in an airport in a state which has 100 or more reported cases. Those are sort of the guidelines that have been established by these various agencies. We're requiring those employees to self-quarantine for the 14-day period before they're able. So that again would be one of those things that would be a COVID, related reason why they would not be at work, and we would be covering their wages at that time.
Thank you.
I don't mean to necessarily put Councilmember Flora on the spot. I know there were a number of people that attended NLC, and Councilmember Flora, you posted this publicly on your page, so I don't think it's putting too much out there, but it looks like you were recently tested. Just wondering if you can speak at all to how that process went, and if you've heard anything back, or hopefully you're not feeling any symptoms, but I don't know what the threshold is for when somebody should really take that step to go get tested or not, and just don't know if you wanted to speak on that at all.
Yeah, I'd be happy to share my experience, which, as you mentioned, I had put on my council Facebook page as well. Now, I should note with the changes on how Johnson County now being a community spread area, I'm not sure this would hold even today, but some of us who attended the NLC conference in DC received notification yesterday that 2 participants of the conference had tested positive. Then some of us who were on, which is actually permission, just me, on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, received a separate communication from NLC if we had attended the committee meeting and were told that those two positive test cases were in that meeting specifically, so that we were in proximity to the two folks who had tested positive. And since Friday, which is I've been home since Friday, I have been experiencing what I still think hopefully were cold-like symptoms of a lot of sneezing and stuffy nose congestion, that type of thing. And those two pieces of information, as of yesterday, when I called my doctor, were enough for them to say they wanted me to get testing. So I did that today. I got an appointment for today, was how they scheduled it, and went through a drive-through testing clinic today. With it kind of looked like a little triage area with tents, so you'd wait in your car, and then you had to call a number, then they called you back, then they sent you through the testing line and on your way. Because of the number of tests, which is good that testing had increased, they said 4 to 5 days on results, and to continue to quarantine. So the 14 days from exposure, so I'm 1 week into the last possible exposure, I guess, at the conference. So it would be through next Wednesday that I'm quarantining in my house. And I would encourage everyone to take it seriously.
Yeah, best of luck. I guess I'm not quite sure what all the thresholds would be for whether or not you should go get tested. And fortunately, this is one of the rare times where I didn't go to NLC, where it sounds like there may have been some possible exposure to it. But hope everyone's feeling well, and best of luck. And hopefully everything comes back negative.
Yeah.
So either way. So.
Absolutely. And I think that the direction being given by the public health officials is call your primary care physician.
Yes.
You know, if you know you have been exposed, and whether you're asymptomatic at this point or experiencing symptoms, call your primary healthcare provider, and they will provide some direction. But as we understand it, if you're asymptomatic and or experiencing mild symptoms, you will likely not have access to testing at this point. The one thing that I also wanted to mention was that as of starting today, Johnson County has established a hotline as a resource, community hotline resource. That number is available on our website. I won't try to say it online, but it's available 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. Spanish language is also available from 8 to 5 Monday through Friday at that same number. If residents have questions after hours, they are also able to call the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. So there are some hotline resources that are available to answer questions as people have them, and as kind of direction continues to change.
I just wanted to comment to Nick. This is Ken. I have contacted my PCP as well, and I know that the others that travel to Washington have as well. And the guidance that was given to me is that I should self-quarantine for 2 weeks from the time that we were on travel together. It'll be good to know what Solly's results are, but that also includes my wife. And so I don't know what the others have learned, but that's the current situation for me.
Well, of course, that's always the danger too. You know, if you self-quarantine, it's pretty much impossible these days to self-quarantine. There are other people in your household and stuff that could potentially be exposed. So wishing everyone the best, and hopefully we find out that nobody's actually got it. And
yeah, agreed.
With this thing.
And my other household member is isolating here as well. You know, I think that's really the message behind all of this and behind all of our city emergency actions, is that everyone needs to be taking this seriously and following the appropriate public health guidance and the direction that everyone, knowingly exposed or not, should be especially careful during this next 2-week period, and try to, practice social distancing and stay in their homes as much as they can.
Yep, I contacted my PCP as well, and I was given the same direction. In fact, they told me to not come in and get tested, really along the same lines as what Laura had talked about. But yeah, we are just self-quarantining, and that's all we can really do for right now, and stay inside.
Yeah, I see Emily posted the phone number in the chat for more information too. So thanks, Emily, for posting that there.
Yeah, I was just going to say that my experience has been similar to what the others have said too. I reached out to my PCP. I'm not feeling any symptoms. I feel great, but again, we're just quarantining until we kind of cross that final step.
Well, it's great to hear with the exposure that most people aren't feeling any symptoms or anything. But again, I just hope everyone gets through this thing okay and keep trucking along.
Right. Any other discussion on this topic?
Laura, I have one other question. If we could all pop back to the personnel policy, would you mind clarifying, Hillary here, by the way, if you don't know my voice, would you mind clarifying a little bit on the 2 weeks paid for if there's a child care issue? And I'm just wondering if that is going to apply, and this probably was included as you explained it, but will that apply to essential or non-essential or just non-essential? Could you just clarify a little bit on that?
So right now, what we are recommending is that child care consideration be extended to everyone because, well, originally we hadn't thought that because we thought the schools would reopen right at essentially the same time. With the governor's executive order closing through the end of the school year, we understand that both our essential and non-essential personnel are now looking at major changes through the latter part of May, and we want to be able to give them the time to make some appropriate decisions for that child care over that period of time. Now, what we have excluded is we're not considering childcare related absences unless the employee is having to do that as a result of their own quarantine or isolation or that for a child. The schools were on spring break. Parents have been planning for this spring break, so childcare accommodations for this week should not be COVID-19 related. So we're looking at those, into starting next week, the week of March 23rd and through April 5th. Obviously, if we have a situation, we're small, we're looking at everything on a case-by-case basis, but that's sort of the approach that we've taken because that absence of availability of the school was on everybody's calendar already for this current week.
Mayor, I believe we can go ahead and make the motion on this policy and then have additional discussion if there's necessary. So Mayor, I move that the City Council approve the state of emergency disaster proclamation, amending the previous state of emergency disaster proclamation dated March 13th, 2020.
Second.
Nick, second. So we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
I just appreciate all the work that everyone's doing to try to come up with plans and try to keep what we can going. And I know it's trying times for everyone, so appreciate all the work by staff and everybody.
Yes, thank you, staff. Laura, you're wonderful. I'm sure you're not getting much sleep, and we appreciate you.
Well, thank you. And I have to pass that down. Everybody up and down throughout the organization has been putting in a lot of time, and this is a time to be creative. This is, sort of uncharted waters for all of us, and it's going to take all of us to get through that.
Yeah.
But,
and Laura, I really appreciate that we got out in front of this too. As you mentioned, we were, I think, one of the first cities in the area to make the emergency declaration. So, really appreciate the prompt attention and treating it as seriously as it needs to be.
Thank you.
I also wanted to mention that Hillary was one of the first to really bring this in terms of a heightened concern to us. And I appreciate that and want to recognize that she did that as well when we had our committee meeting review. So thank you, Hillary, and thanks to staff. And obviously, I really appreciate all that you've done, Laura, with your staff. Thank you.
Ken, I wanted to be wrong, but turns out I was right on this one, unfortunately.
You were right.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Please call roll.
Flora,
Aye.
Boltinghouse,
Aye.
Inman,
Aye.
Crane,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Schlosmacher,
Aye.
Thomas,
Aye.
Rothrock.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, the next item has to do with moving the regularly scheduled April city council meeting, or city committee, council committee meetings from April 1st to April 8th. Any discussion? Or Laura, do you need to?
Yeah, Mayor, I would just say here, because I think the logical question is why that might be a date for us to meet, ahead of April 5th. The reality is the staff isn't going to have time to get the committee packet put together by then in a thoughtful way. And so what we would ask is that we push the committee meeting specifically to April 8th, but that you all still preserve that April 1st date, and that we maybe target that as a date for a special meeting to consider any revisions to this disaster proclamation. And that we could just then focus that on the 1st, and that will give us a little bit more time to bring you a good packet for your committee meeting on April 8th.
All right, do we have a motion on that, please?
Mayor, I move the city council move the regularly scheduled April city council committee meetings to Wednesday, April 8th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m.
Second.
Second.
Okay, seconded. So we have motion and second discussion. Hearing none, please call for the vote.
Inman,
Aye.
Flora,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Thomas,
Aye.
Crane,
Aye.
Boltinghouse,
Aye.
Rothrock,
Aye.
Schlosmacher.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, that concludes new business. Moving on to item 10, comments from the city council. Does any member of the council wish to share something?
I just have a quick question. Does someone know if we have anything in our boxes at City Hall that needs immediate attention?
We will look and we will advise you if necessary, but I think you're in pretty good shape.
Okay, thank you.
I have something. First Suburbs Coalition meeting with Mark, their activities have been suspended, so that will not be happening in April.
Who is your friend behind you, Kristen?
It's Toby Keith. Toby, close your mic.
Anybody have anything else?
I've got
Yes.
Go ahead, Trent.
I was just going to say, I know it got rightfully kind of overshadowed by a lot of the COVID talk, but I did feel like NLC was really great this year, especially as a first-time member. And I know once the dust kind of settles on this and we're back to kind of regularly scheduled business, I'd be happy to show just a couple of quick slides just to the group about kind of what I took out of it and what I thought we all kind of learned together. And just, I thought it was just really well done all around. So it was really rewarding for me to be there. And I think I can speak for most of us too, saying that, or for all of us saying the same thing. So glad I got to go. It was an honor.
Nick?
Yeah, I was just gonna throw out the reminder that we're both hearing it, but economic impacts of this thing are pretty staggering too. And just keep in mind that the local restaurants, a lot of them are still open for business for pickup and delivery. And there are other ways to support some of the local businesses too through gift cards and some other means. So, we all want to self-quarantine or keep our social distancing and follow those good practices. But at the same time, I think it's incumbent to also keep in mind that there's people out there still working, trying to keep their shops open so that when we return to normal conditions, we can still go sit down and have a nice bite to eat somewhere. So I'd encourage everybody to still try to get out there as much as you can within your means, obviously, to support some of the local businesses and restaurants during this time.
Yes. And while quarantined, I did order a gift card, and I would encourage people, even if you don't see it publicized online, I just reached out to one of the mission businesses that I frequent and asked if they had electronic gift cards now, and they said, you know, they'd updated it and they'd got it. So I did that, and Harvesters also has a special COVID-19 donation link. So that's also a good way to support those in our community who are going to be hard hit by this.
All right. Let's move on to item 11, Mayor's Report. And I would echo, I've seen firsthand the professionalism of our staff and how you can make all the best plans. We just had our retreat, right? Made all these plans for what we're going to do in 2020, and then several weeks later, we are now pivoting and focusing a tremendous amount of energy on something we did not anticipate. So I do commend staff. They've done a fantastic job. This situation is changing hourly, daily. So it's tough to put your arms around. So I think that the actions we took this evening are appropriate, and I appreciate that. So City Administrator's Report. Ms. Smith, do you have anything else?
Just briefly, I don't have any upcoming meetings or events to advertise, but I did also want to mention that I had seen some information, and we'll get this out there as well, that the United Way has a community economic relief fund that they have established to assist with bills, rent, and food. And so we will get that number posted and available and publicized to our residents as well. So again, trying to get, it's a difficult time, and as Councilmember Schlesmacher said, there will be economic impacts. We will see economic impacts as a city as we move into and through our budget process for 2021. And we will be experiencing that along with everyone else, not only in our region, but I think throughout the country. So thank you all for your leadership. Thank you all for your engagement in this process. And I kind of like this, virtual meeting, seeing everybody on the screen. So thank you for, giving us the opportunity to try this. We are trying this same technology with our boards and commissions. So to the extent that we can keep those functions and our city business moving forward, we'll try to do that.
I'd just like to say thank you to Emily for all the help that she did getting us ready for this meeting. So thank you. It worked out quite well.
I second that. She spent over an hour with me, and I'm kind of technologically challenged anyway, but we had 2 computers going, and she was amazing, very patient.
Thank you all for working through the technological insecurities, maybe. Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 13, executive session. We do not have a need for an executive session. So before we adjourn tonight, I want to share with the public that the video from this meeting will be available through a link on our website at missionks.org. There being no further business tonight, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
That's
Second.
Second.
Who seconded?
Debbie.
Debbie. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right. Good night, everybody. Stay safe.
Aye.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.